I'm just here for eye candy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Let's Chat Live, a show where we do weekly live interviews to connect you with the voices behind the podcast that you want to listen to and learn a little bit about the hosts and who they are as people. I am your host, Bree, producer of Let's Chat, and with me today we have Rob from Fat, Drunk, and Stupid podcast. Rob, can you tell us a little bit about your show?
No.
We just interviewed you.
Yeah. Then go watch that. I'm not going to give it away.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding. Fat, Drunk, and Stupid is a show where I just do some solo episodes, have occasional friends and guests, and talk about pretty much anything. So it's a lot of fun. Everybody should go check it out.
Fantastic. Thank you. And today we have the awesome opportunity to sit down with a gentleman named Hugo from Hugos Post podcast. He's a full-time husband, full-time real estate agent, full-time dad, and he's a part-time chicken farmer, which is awesome. And he believes that there's always something to talk about. And I read a little bit about his backstory, and I just definitely knew that we had to have him on the show to talk about that. So we are going to introduce Hugo. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
We are so happy to have. Good afternoon. You're in what, California? Was it 4 hours, 3 hours behind daylight savings?
3 hours. I think we're 3 hours behind, and we're also 71 degrees outside. So I don't know where you're in Virginia, so I think you might be a tad colder. I think you guys go by Celsius over there.
Basically, you're rubbing it in our faces that you're out there having his hand on the beach.
I think that's the best way to start a show, is really to be antagonistic with the host.
Bring it. It's on. You have set the stage.
Fantastic. No, thank you for having me.
Oh man, we're so excited. I found you on Twitter. A couple months ago, where I just saw you post, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And then I read a little bit about your bio and like where you grew up and like your whole backstory. And I don't want to give anything away. I'm going to let you do that. Let's start with, did you have any podcast experience before you started your podcast?
I guess the experience that I had is my wife and I have always enjoyed road trips, and I have a lot of road rage. And so what would happen is that we would go on the road, and in California, you just can't help but hit traffic, right?
God, yeah.
So the moment that I hit traffic, I turn into this maniac of a person and start yelling and complaining about life in general. Sometimes it's funny, a lot of times it's not. And so basically what my wife said is, why don't you record this and annoy other people and leave me the heck alone? And so that was kind of the springboard for, all right, well, I think I'm an interesting guy. I have, a lot of thoughts. And also I found that, when I started Twitter a long time ago, back in the days of only, it was about
2017.
Yeah, that you were very limited in what you could say. And so a lot of what I write is just my little quick quantifications on life. But many times I wanted to expand past that. I wanted to really give people the background to what it is that I was talking about if I wasn't being very obvious. And that's why the reason the show is called Hugos Post, because it's an expansion of the stream of consciousness per se that I have on my Twitter stream. And that has led to have some fantastic conversations. I've been able to interview some really interesting people, and just more than anything, get that gab that I have in me that nobody else here at home wants to hear from anymore, and push that onto the world.
And push it gently sway into the world.
When I say it that way, it sounds more like I'm harassing, but I like to say that I'm a metaphor to the universe.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. Thank you. So for someone who hasn't really listened to your show yet, what exactly where should they start? From like the beginning, the middle? Is there an episode that you want to
The way
Start
that
with.
I approached it is there's a lot of great and fantastic shows that tend to pigeonhole themselves, and that's okay because that's a strategy. But they tend to pigeonhole themselves to a date and a time. This is what was happening on June whatever 2006. I wanted my show to be like the ones that I enjoy, where you can basically jump at any point in time, in the theme and the subject matter could be relevant to what's going on in your life, or it may not, but it's something that you experience at one point, or you might experience in the future. So, case in point, if I come across a poem that I used to understand or that I first encountered when I was a little kid, but now at 43, which by the way, I look fantastic for
It's so
43.
young.
Yeah, at 43, all of a sudden that poem now makes sense in the concept of being older. Then I'll go ahead and read that poem, and then I'll tell you what it means to me, what it could mean to you. But you sometimes what morals I take from it, and it's an expansion of what I typically can't just post, on the Twitter machine, and so I think to answer your question best, it really is just that. A You can jump in at any point, and I think you'll find something relevant. Even the interviews, because again, those are about interesting people or people that I find interesting.
Yeah. How do you go about getting? So you find someone that's interesting, or like through Twitter or through the universe.
The universe usually, but a lot of it, interestingly enough, has been on Twitter because I really do think Twitter has this bad reputation of being a cesspool or a hive of scum and villainy, and it can be that for sure. But there's also a lot of really cool people on there, and if you're interested in them, they're going to be interested in you. And so what I found is that if I vet somebody for a while and they vet me, and we have good exchanges back and forth, eventually I might find myself sending out a quick distant message and asking for permission of, have you considered being on my podcast? A lot of people don't feel comfortable with that. They're interested in that space, but they don't want to use their voice. And then some people are like, of course, dude, I'd love to do it. And those are typically the authors, the artists.
Mm-hmm.
I interview people who are webcam models all the way back, to astrophysicists. I've done both. If I find that it's interesting,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you. And the vetting happens through Twitter most of the time.
Twitter has a lot of cool people on it. And the whole podcast community is just, in my experience, has been so wonderful and welcoming and just all kinds of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm into 100 or so episodes now, and I'm always surprised that somebody will want to say yes, and also that they appreciate the kind of research that I go into when I have an interview with them. Because if you write a book, I'll read it, and then I'll have questions on it, and it's never a gotcha sort of situation. I'm really interested in what you wrote, so let me tell you what it impacted me, and. Oh man, it's like I said, it's fun doing it that way. But I do try to take my time that if I'm going to have somebody on my episode, I'm going to be professional and do intense research on them because I think that's what all good hosts do.
Fantastic. Wow. That's a great way to approach it. Okay, that's 5 out of 5. You're hired.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say being prepared is a big thing because I think a lot of times, sometimes what I've seen is that people will just have a guest on just for the sake of having a guest. They're not really interested in what the person has to say. They just want to have a guest. But I think it goes much better if you're actually interested in what that person is doing or what they're saying or their project or their book or if they're another podcaster. You know what I'm saying? It kind of, I think it gives a lot more content, a lot more substance as opposed to, hey, I just need some guests. Anybody want to, come on.
Exactly. I think you hit it right on the head. One of the best compliments that I think any podcaster will ever get from a guest is something to the effect of, I have to really think about that question so that I can give you a good answer. Because there's so much canned stuff out there. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a format. Shows that are successful have formats. But there's something, like you said, Rob, something about that little extra bit of research and knowledge about the person because you cared enough to know about them, that really turns the corner and it makes what would be a bland episode into something a little bit more special. At least that has been my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And it creates a nice space because the person that you're interviewing knows that you did your research and you're actually interested and engaged and might ask questions that other people may not think of. So
Definitely.
that's awesome.
And I think, and I don't know about your guys' experience, but at least mine has been too, that I actually, for every episode that I record, I probably have listened to 7 or 8 podcasts of other people because I also study how other people, the rapport that others have with others. It's not that I ever want to copy anybody else because I don't think that's genuine. I have my own flow and the way that I deliver things. But you can always learn about the good things that some do and also some of the bad things that other people do. And I think, again, I am not the world's greatest podcaster. I have a face for radio. That's why, I gravitated towards that. But I'm trying to learn and get better, and you do that by listening to a lot of other people. And I guess that's my sales training, right? That good salespeople listen the majority of the time versus talking for and boring people to death.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I went through this period where I listened to over 200 podcasts in different podcasts in like a month. And what I heard from some of them was, well, that I liked and other things I didn't like when people don't introduce themselves, when it's just an audio podcast. I need to get the voice with who's talking so I can keep up with it. So I always make sure to introduce myself and encourage other people to introduce themselves when they're starting their podcasts. So it's experience, and listening is an experience too, and that's how you can better your show. And
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. We could talk at length about all of those things. It's just we're all learning together too, and I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated about the podcasting community is that yes, there's competition, and I think that there's a lot of chasing fame from some folks. But the people that just do it because they want to get better at it, they are very supportive. And I've been lucky enough to have gone into other people's shows and have people come onto mine, and it's a practice run and it's a trial run. And if mistakes are made, what are you going to do? You're human.
Enjoy it, own it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I learned was you can't be afraid to make changes along the way. If you can always say, okay, I'm going to have it this, like for mine. I always thought you had to have like this long intro in the beginning because I listened to a bunch of other podcasts and they had it. Well, as it turns out, most people, including me, I just fast forward through it.
Sure.
Like if I'm going to listen to a podcast with a guest that I want to hear about, I don't really care about the 20-minute intro where I just want to get to the interview, right? Or whatever they're doing. So I had that in mind, even though I was like, well, I got to have an intro, even though most people probably won't listen to it. So I just ended up just getting rid of that altogether. And I introduced myself at the beginning of the episode, but I say, hey, welcome to this week's episode of Fat, Drunk, and Stupid. I'm Rob with you as always. And thanks for listening. Find me on Twitter, and then off we go. Right
back to the racist. Yeah,
so,
I think that there's a lot of this smart.
Yeah,
it's because we are dealing with a world of very, what's the word I'm looking for? We have very short attention spans, and again, not a knock on anybody, but you have a sea of podcasts that you have access to, and so you could very quickly say, this is taking too long. I'm moving on to the next thing real fast because please get to the meat of it. And again, things that you learn along the way, but I think you're very bright in saying that, Rob, which is if you're going to make the error, it's all right. Just pivot and switch and try something else. And so that's how I got into the podcasting. That's been my life through it, and so there you go.
So it's Hugo's posts. So is it from blogging, writing? You do a lot of reading too, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's let's say I'll give you a perfect example. I am a big, I came from Mexico originally, and when I came here to the U.S., my parents were very conservative, and during the time of like hair metal or like rap when it first started becoming a thing, or even alternative rock, my parents were like, "No, you can't listen to that. That is the devil's music, not for you." And so I got stuck listening to a lot of Mexican stuff and the oldies. Those were the two channels that my parents were cool with. And so, but in a sense, yeah, it kind of set me back a few years, or I had to sneak in a lot of Two Live Crew when my parents you couldn't hear.
Yeah.
But but it also like gave me a sense for like a lot of jazz. It gave me a sense for doo wop, a lot of oldie stuff. And so a lot of the times when I'm like here at home and I listen to a jingle and like a lyric will come up, I'm like, dude, I gotta share that, just a lyric. But I also not try to share the beginning of the song or the obvious part of the song, the chorus. I'll try to find like a kind of a hidden line that should resonate to fans of that song, but you kind of have to know it. And so I'll post that on the Twitter machine, and I'll get people, that will say, oh, they'll know the song, they'll try to finish it, and then we'll finish the song together, right? They'll link back and
Love
hit me
it.
up with the rest of the song, and then the memes comes and it becomes a whole thing. And so that's kind of how I am. If I find something interesting at that given point in time, let's just share it, and then we'll just I don't know. I think my computer's gonna lock up. Let's just.
Oh no, I think we lost you a little bit, Hugo, the voice.
You go blink twice if you're in Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Oh.
Is that like a beer or something?
Milwaukee's a city in Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Oh, sure. Thank you for Geography with Rob.
Hello, this is Wine with Brie and Rob. I've got
next week.
Chateau Saint Michel. It's a Sauvignon Blanc. And
Yeah.
Rob, what are you drinking today?
Uday Miller Lite and the Batman koozie.
I'm
Batman
sorry about that.
koozie.
Look at that.
We
Hey,
were
it's
talking about wine.
I apologize for that.
That's
We'll
okay.
forgive you as long as you put memes on the Twitter.
Some memes.
Yeah.
Some memes and
Yeah.
some jiffies.
Yeah, I can do all of that. I can put some JPEGs and some
Yes,
some
please.
memes, and I'll go on my MySpace page and
Oh,
man. I need-
bring it back.
I need to go look at my MySpace page. I bet it's still there.
I wouldn't even know what my
Don't do
password
it.
is. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to find my wall and what BS I was writing on back then.
I know.
Man, that's
It's
crazy.
embarrassing. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so anyways, going back to that, yeah, that's the whole thing. I riff off of things, and so that's what the show's about. But that's also my social media account. Twitter is definitely the place where I am the most liberal, for lack of a better term, whereas my Facebook and my Instagram page is more about the local stuff here, and because I don't want to argue with my neighbors, and unfortunately, Facebook lately has turned into a place where you sometimes you don't want to know what the guy down the street thinks of.
It's the worst because you have to see them sometimes before
Well,
pandemic.
Before the pandemic, yeah.
So I feel like you shared with me a link to like your experience growing up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is just incredible. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience that made you who you are today, to be able to kind of be like an open person and being able to talk about anything on the Twitter? And
Well, first and foremost, I think you should have like tissues nearby just in case that you're overwhelmed by
I've
emotion.
got wine.
And Rob, it's okay
Touch
to
my
cry.
tears. He's a crier with movies, I hear.
Oh, I cried last year. I'm good for a while.
Okay, good. Don't dry up.
No.
For me, I don't know how you summarize 40 years or 43 years of life, but I guess the pivotal moments for me were I was born in a different country. Obviously, I was born in Mexico, and we had a fairly good life. I would like to say that we were middle class. But Mexico then went through two things. One, a pretty bad economic downturn that affected my parents' livelihood. And then it's a pretty devastating earthquake that, torn down a big chunk of where we lived and just kind of devastated the area. And so what those things prompted was, the old immigrant story of we need to go to America and find a better place. And so my dad did that. He headed out to the U.S. to find a place, and then kind of forgot about us. And my mom, being who she was like, "No, I don't think so, Charlie. You have a wife and 3 kids, and we were supposed to make a life together." And then one day, my mom just kind of picked up my sisters and I, got on the bus, and took off to the border. And again, things were much different than they are now. And one day, just called my dad up from the southern border and said, "Hey, come and pick us up." And so we came to the U.S. As immigrants, and just started building a life here. And when that happened, I was about 10 years old, and at that point, you are cognizant enough of what's going on, and you realize that you're leaving everything behind. But at the same time, you're happy because you're going to where Mickey lives, and second of all, you're going to somewhere cool like Los Angeles, not Virginia.
Right? I mean, that's why I was born there. I was like, make sure I'm born in California, guys.
I'm not going to Sacramento. So you're coming to LA, and you're going to go see your dad that you haven't seen in forever. It's an exciting adventure, but then at the same time, when you come here, you realize that you went from being a middle-class kid to being poor. And for my sisters, maybe not, but for myself, I was definitely aware. And just being the sensitive kid that I was, it was hard. And then, of course, you have to deal with the challenges of being an immigrant, not knowing the language. And California has not always been a very nice place for anybody that's brown. Not like the rest of the U.S. where we all get along. And so you deal with that, and then of course there's the 90s, and I grew up in LA during a time when the riots were a thing, and I also knew that the area where I lived, as much as I enjoyed and loved the neighborhood, it was too limited for what I wanted to do, because I've always been eclectic. I've always been somebody that kind of that wanted to see the rest of the world. And when I got to college, I met somebody who is my other half in also in the most operative ways. She's the best person I've ever known, but she also who centers me, but also she has an adventurous spirit. And with her, over the course of the last 20 plus years, we've gone out and we've adventured and we've seen stuff, and then of course the last big adventure that we were on and embarked on is having our kids, where we never thought we were going to have any when we first got started. And so now a lot of what I write about too is parenting and the challenges that I see as a parent, and being primarily a stay-at-home dad, because I made some changes in my career. But I would say that those have been the big touch-off points. The growing up in a different country and the way that we live, moving here, being poor, and then realizing that I wanted to live life as best on my terms as possible, and what that meant, and also at the same time be a good parent and a good husband.
That's a lot. It's a lot to do. That's great.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead. Sure.
So I know you said you moved here when you were 10, and obviously as an immigrant. And in your stage in life now, having been living in America all these years, do you still feel like an immigrant?
There are moments. I think that the rhetoric is when you feel it, because nobody comes up to you, at least with me, and says, "Hey, pardon the word, hey, wetback, go back to where you live." That has not happened to me in over 20 years, right? It did happen. But I think part of it is because of my education. A part of it is my station in life. Also, and I married a white girl, for lack of a better term, and so my kids, their complexion may gives them a certain degree of security in this society, right? And so all of those things together have, and I live in a pretty progressive, very cool community here in Southern California. If I were to go to other parts of the country, I don't know that I think that I might feel it more. But then I always wonder, is it something that I bring to the table, or is it something that really exists there?
Right.
And so I don't know. Obviously, though, again, without getting into all the politics of things, it hasn't been easy to be somebody of Mexican descent, or being a Mexican, under the Trump administration because of the rhetoric. But personally, I don't know that I felt it. Like I said, I think that I live with fairly good people, and we get along. But I think it's an excellent question.
Good.
Yeah, I'm my maiden name is Valdez.
There you go.
And like I would get these flyers in the mail in Spanish. I've taken Spanish in class, and like I backpacked across Mexico, and like I am Hispanic and Indian, but it was just I felt like
I will say though, Rob, something to your point, or to the question, that if anybody has been where I have had more challenges or more discussions or more healthy debates about being Latino, Latinx, whatever we go by nowadays, has been with other Latinos. Because I think that there is a reckoning as far as who do we want to be as people, and or also that it isn't a monolith, that there are so many different shades of brown, for lack of a better term. I think that, and it's even something that's happening still today, conservative Republican Latinos, and how we reconcile that in the community, because I don't understand it, but they exist and they're there. Right. I know that religion plays a part of that. I know that there's a lot of things that go into it, and probably it needs more time than we have today. But to answer your to go into it, to discuss or to address your question, I think that if anybody that I've had the more debates with has been other Latinos.
I think that makes sense, because like you said, there's some like subgroups, I guess, within the community. So it's not like you can say, hey, we're all kind of on the same page here. Because I think that, probably you would probably agree too, that a lot of folks in your situation probably was never able to achieve, financial stability, things like that. They work a lot of blue collar jobs and things like that. A lot of farming, that kind of thing. That could change someone's outlook, I think, definitely.
It can. I work with clientele. I'm a real estate agent by trade, and I think that was mentioned at one point. And primarily because it is Southern California, the price point that I sell at is fairly high. And but multi-million-dollar homes are not the only properties that are available in Southern California. We run the gamut, right? And it's very difficult sometimes with the Latino community to help them navigate those processes. A lot of it has to do because, I'll give you a perfect example. Again, I don't know if both of you are in Virginia. I know that Bree is. But, depending on okay. So here in Southern California, let's say that our average home is probably about $500,000 where I live, right? For any one family to have 20% down to give to their kid or their kiddos when they're ready to purchase a home, so to have $100,000 just to give to your kid so that they can put a down payment on a home is nearly impossible, right? A lot of us can't do that, right? And not just one kid. What if you have two or three or more than that? In addition, you have to get them through college at one point if that's something that you want to do. So how do you save up to get them through college, then to give them down payments for a home, and then you want to retire one day too? And that makes it, and that's very hard to do in Southern California. Is if you're working 9 to 5, if not more, and not even making minimum wage, or if you're not getting paid, or if you're getting paid under the table, it's very difficult for families to be able to have enough to purchase a home. And so what I often find is that, and what I've gravitated to, because it's what I've enjoyed doing, is working with clientele where sometimes it will take us up to a year and a half to find property because they have to knock on a lot of doors and write in a ton of offers and until eventually we get there. But I will say that pride of ownership, is through the roof when it comes to, because it really is a dream come true. And that's the reason why I do it. And again, nothing wrong with selling multi-million-dollar homes. Trust me, I like those commission checks too. But it's a certain there's a different reward to the heart when you're helping out a family. But yes, and here in Southern California, a lot of disparities when it has come to the pandemic and how hard hit those communities have been. I mean, I know that for myself and my family, because of our financial station, we've been fairly lucky that we can work from home and my kids can be at school and it hasn't really affected. We have to worry about things like, their social well-being and are my kids doing okay with not being at school and what that does to their feelings. And not that there's anything wrong with that, it's real.
Yeah,
but we also don't have to worry necessarily so much about the fact that our internet bills comes due along with everything else that needs to be paid for. And where the heck is that going to come from?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just bummed everybody out.
No, I was actually thinking so in Virginia, I work with social media with like different companies and businesses in downtown Charlottesville, and we're doing a push for like minority owned businesses and women owned businesses to kind of give them a perk. And so I feel like they're finally being in the forefront and getting an advantage and like promoting them. And I think that's fantastic. I think that we're at a point where it's good to be a minority, and like I'm a minority and I think it's awesome. But
well, when it comes to, I don't know that I would ever say that it's good to be a minority. I think that I would say that we're getting to the point where if there's positives about this pandemic, it's that it has bubbled up all of this BS that just regular people have to deal with. And I don't know that that's just brown people or black folk or Asian people, or it's just that there is so much disparity in the way that our society is set up. There's a lot of poor white folks out there who are struggling, and you get it. It's hard, and on top of that, your business is getting shut down because there's the politics of it all. And so in that sense, we're having I would hope that this time, whatever this year and a half has been, is a correction for a lot of bad decisions.
Oh
right?
Gosh, yeah,
that
absolutely.
This is going to be a societal exploration of what is the American dream. What has it been for the different, strata of society? And do we have a broken system? And I think that all of us would agree that in so many different ways and shapes and forms, we have a broken system that doesn't work for the average person.
Absolutely.
Right? And, and you could put, you can put a brown face on it, or you can put a white face on it. But at the same time, if you're hurting and you're dying, it doesn't matter. It's a human being that's in pain.
Absolutely. And the great thing that I've seen, well, some of the positives I've seen through this pandemic is people helping, humans helping other humans. Like there's organizations out there that give kids like free lunches and like meals for people that just need one sometimes. And like there was a toy drive during Christmas, and like the state of Virginia is doing this thing where they'll pay like 3 months rent for people within like a certain like income level. So, and just general, I'm in a Buy Nothing group on our Facebook, and it's like whatever you don't need or want, like you say, hey, this is available. Would anyone like it? And vice versa. You can ask for things, and it really builds like a sense of community. And since the pandemic, it has just been fantastic to connect with these people and share what you have and they don't have, or get things that you need.
I agree with you. I think one of the strengths that we have as a nation is the work at the local level, because there's all this madness that goes on, and we have seen going on in the at the federal level, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to communities, they turn out. I mean, it's not perfect and it's not everywhere, but one of the things that I'm very proud of here where I'm at is that even though we live in this metropolis that is Los Angeles, there's all these little pockets of community. And some of the things that they have done are just amazing for one another.
Yeah.
And, that's where, like, I know that all is not lost, because there's a lot of humanity at the local level. Too bad it doesn't often translate to the people at the very top that are paying, that are spending the money.
Yeah. Not yet.
So
Hopefully.
We hope.
You can't always, I mean, I've said it before on my podcast, you can't always depend on the federal government. It starts with your local community, your neighborhood,
Absolutely.
local level kind of stuff. That's really where stuff that really impacts you really happens. I mean, I think that's where the real difference is.
Starting in your own community and even writing your congressman if it comes to that.
I tweet at them, but yeah.
Tweeting is very effective. Like,
I tweeted mine.
if you
But
have an
how
issue.
many times? Yeah. I have a history of being a Twitter, like if I'm a real estate agent again, and sometimes when things aren't happening, I will go and look for a company and I'll tweet at them and like, hey, what's going on? My client needs X, Y, and Z, and it's they've gotten savvy. So far, I haven't gotten blocked too much, but I'm kind of a tough as nails kind of guy when it comes to that thing.
Yeah, because they don't want their name being, negative, anything negative on their name on Twitter, and they just want to handle it as quickly as possible. And that's what I do when I want something done. I just go to Twitter.
Shame them on Twitter.
I'll just tag them, and I'm like, hey, I'm not really satisfied with this. What's going on? And also praises, like, hey, AT&T, thank you for refunding me the change your number fee. So there's both. It goes both ways. No, it's not. Verizon's the worst.
I think they're both bad.
Hugo, tiebreaker. You're like, Verizon. So how do you really come up with the context and content of your show? Like interviews, is it things that you want to talk about, what the other person wants to talk about, or something that's going on in your life currently for each episode?
I think a lot of it has to do. That's an interesting question from the standpoint that I sometimes don't record just to record. Sometimes we get into at least I've seen that there's weaknesses in shows, so there's burnout when we feel that, oh, I got to get a show in. I said that I was going to have a show every 45 minutes, and so I got to record the next one, and so you burn through a lot of your material. And what I found that for me is that, and it's an extrapolation of my overall philosophy on internet usage, that unless I've had a lot of wine, that I got to think it through, because I'm putting my name onto this, right? And so it better be really what I mean to say, even if I'm trying to be, again, not controversial, but if I'm trying to look at something, I gotta mean it. And so my shows are, do I really have something to say about this? And I'm in the right frame of mind to say this. And it's, if I do, then I'll start taking notes and start to develop a longer, basically an agenda of how I want to develop the show. But a lot of the times, because I'm very stream of consciousness, or it just, I just go off the cuff, I need just something very loose, but it really is based on something that I really want to talk about. But it could be about anything.
Yeah, that's not. Are there any topics that you stray away from, or are you able to talk about just about anything? There's two of you, Hugo. I broke him.
Oh, yeah. broke up on my other computer.
We forgive
Look at
you.
me doing the internet shuffle. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are there any topics that you steer away from, or are you kind of able to talk about anything without limits?
I mean, I'm pretty open-minded. I think the only things that I've had to be mindful as of late has been the fact that everything that I do, again, has my name on it, right? So if you look at my Twitter machine account, or if you look at Facebook or InstaFace, whatever it is that I'm working on, it has my name attached to it. And I'm old school that way. If I sign something, that means that I stand by it.
Absolutely.
But I'm also aware now, very well aware, that I'm not the only person affected by it, right? Even though I'm my own boss and I can do basically whatever I want, I also have a real boss, ahead of me, which is my wife.
I was going to say, is it your wife?
She is the arbiter of a lot of things, and so what I say affects her. And also, I have kids, and I have a middle schooler and I have a high schooler, and if Dad can say whatever the heck he wants online, but their friends could listen, and so I gotta make sure that I'm true to myself as best that I can, but also that I'm responsible enough for them to not put them in a spotlight that they may not be ready for and that they didn't ask for.
Absolutely.
And so I'm careful. I'm very careful about that. But because I do talk about, for instance, my coaching, and I talk about my experiences as being, a stay-at-home dad, I will discuss things that have to do with my family life. But again, I try to be as careful as I can to protect their privacy, and also not to share anything where they haven't given me permission to share. And that's just the basic overall philosophy that we have on life, where just because there are kids, that doesn't mean that they belong to us.
Exactly.
And they may have a limited agency because, again, I'm responsible for them, but that doesn't mean that just because Dad wants to put a cute photo of my kid because he was hopping around, in the backyard, that he wants his friends looking at that and with the ramifications of that. So, but outside of that, if I think it's interesting and I think it's relevant, and if I think that I have a take on it, sure, I'll talk about it.
Yeah, like for Lunch Chat Live, we've had some people wanting to come on, but their views didn't really go with what we believe. So we turned some down, and I don't like a lot of language on the show, or we don't endorse anything with, illegal drugs, because that's just not our scene. That's not what our image is. So there's some stuff that we won't even touch, but I think under the right context, we're open to have a conversation about anything. And it's a conversation. It's not an argument. I think it's great when people don't agree with you, because then you can open up a conversation and,
you can learn from that. And I think it's one of the challenges that we have. Again, this is me pontificating, but it's one of the challenges that we have as a society, where we feel that there's something wrong with existing in the middle. And what I mean by that is that everything has to be extreme, right? There's got to be left and there's got to be right. There's got to be blue and there's got to be red. And the cat just jumping in the back behind you. And there's got to be, cat people and dog people. And there's got to be us, and there's got to be them. And I think that there's a lot of discussion, a lot of good discussion that could be had in the middle, because that's where we live. I mean, the reality is, and again, not knowing much about you guys personally, but I would like to say that you guys have a lot of the similar drives that I have, which means that if my kids get hurt and I got to go put a Band-Aid on them, that I go do that, that I have food on the table, that, that I share a good wife, glass of wine with my wife at the end of the day, or that people just want to live their lives somewhere in the middle in relative comfort, and and there's good discussions that could be had out of that. Not everything has to be an extreme, and not everything has to be a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the some podcasts are into it for the standpoint of being shocking or daring and whatnot.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you just don't need that. You just need three good
Sounds
folks
stressful.
that want to hang out and tell some jokes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any jokes, Hugo?
Dad jokes. Nobody wants to hear that.
I love I love puns. I love dad jokes. I love memes. I'm very nerdy.
I'm a camping dad joke telling kind of guy, but they have to be organic. So it's not like I
Yeah,
force
I'm
it.
sorry.
That's okay.
right.
But my wit is a la carte.
All right. Well, if you have the opportunity to do a joke in the next 15 minutes, you just do it. Okay.
I'll do my very best.
I think it's like my personality online that's what you get with me. Like when I write, the way I speak as well. So I like things that are organic and naturally formed, and like conversations, and not pushing things, or because I think that's where you get to know somebody more on a personal level, and from that comes better conversation and communication. So I appreciate that you do that with your podcasts as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I found I was one of the way that I sometimes approach it is this way. I go onto people's InstaFace accounts, or I look at the stuff that they post, and I'll just choose something that I find interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll ask about that. And let me give you an example. I was interviewing a great gal that her business is she has sex towels, right? And
I'm sorry, did you say sex towels?
sex towels.
Okay.
Great episode, great gal, right? And so she had that, but in her Instagram account, she has photos of her like having a cup of tea. And the way the light hits the cup is just beautiful. And so I start the show, or we're in the middle of the show, and I start talking about the cup of tea just to, because people are in that space. They're like, oh, yeah, I'll tell you what I was feeling in that moment, what emotions came from that. And then it just delved right into, the rest of the stuff that we want to discuss, which were the sex towels. But I've always found that way. I like to merge into conversations. I don't like to just hit people with, hey, how much you make a year?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm very wrong. No, I'm not. Don't come rob me. Internet.
Okay. Well, you don't have any personal information online. That's smart. Sorry, my cats.
The cat's
Rob.
about you.
Hi. So talking about the technical side of your show, you record, you do the editing and like the social media yourself, or how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been fairly easy. I see your fancy microphones there. I have my little rinky-dink thing.
Fancy.
Because again, I feel like I need to earn my fancy microphone, and what I mean by that is that I got to get good enough to like earn that for myself. So it's a goal, really. So and also because of the nature of my show, again, it's very off the cuff, right? As you can tell, if you give me a topic, I'll talk for 20 minutes ad nauseum about it. And so I can record 20 minutes.
I mean, I think personally that's good. That's a good thing, because I mean, if you're a podcaster, you should be able to do that. I think.
Well, I do that in bed when my wife's trying to go to sleep, and trust me, it doesn't play that well then.
See, this is why guys start podcasts, because nobody else wants to listen.
The wife doesn't want to listen to
So I come out here in the garage and talk to myself for hours.
Listen, fella, you go do that with Rob. Leave me alone.
That's right.
I don't want to be poked.
Just go to the garage.
Like, go get Rob.
I don't want to be poked that way.
Oh my god.
So yeah, no, I mean so I don't really have to do a lot of editing because I speak so fast sometimes, and it's just so rapid fire that plus it's all wisdom. So who wants to cut that out?
Obviously,
Exactly.
I can tell. Yeah.
I always say
Must be the Los Angeles.
I always say you don't. If you get it right the first time, you don't have to edit. That's the way I see it.
100%. That's my thing, and I always feel that it's starting the podcast that I struggle with. Like I have an idea of how I want to start, and then I go on a riff, and it's like, oh, I missed it. I didn't want to say it that way. Let me kick back and start it all over again. And I'll record 2 minutes, and that's not how I wanted to do it.
Oh
but
no!
Once I do that, once I get that going, then I'm okay. And again, my shows are very simple in that sense, so I don't have to worry. As far as the social media or the dissemination of info about it, it's fairly simple. I mean, I have Twitter, of course, which is my main source of way that I get stuff out, and that's where most of the people listen to me from. Anyway,
it's true. That's how I found you.
What do you think? Didn't want anything to do with this conversation. The cat left. He's like, I've had it with this. I have 9 lives, bro.
He's like, you already killed 3 of them.
Enough already. Hey, what kind of stuff do you have in mind for the future? As far as like any goals for your podcasting this year?
I mean, I really like to get to 20,000 listens. I mean, I'm at 10, and I like.
Congratulations!
Thank you. I mean,
that's big.
Half of them are me, but
big timing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what I would really like to do is more interviews. I would like to, but I would also like to do live recordings. One of the goals that I've had for myself is I meet a lot of great people online. I would like to go back to meeting people in real life. I'm a big
absolutely.
And, obviously, it can't be everybody because I mean, you guys are across the country, and you guys don't want to come to a dumpy place in like California.
If it's not Sacramento, I'm not going.
I'm just kidding. You can't make it there. You can't make it anymore. But I really would like to just meet with people and sit down and record and break bread with them and have wines and shots. I really would like to just enjoy hanging out. And so I would like to do some more live recordings. And I think also I would like to get some better gear. I do struggle with that sometimes. I've been working on my garage and really trying to make that a better recording place. Nothing as fancy as what you have.
Look at this, baby.
I would like to dress it down a little bit more.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
I should. I was like, I forgot. I left the fancy ladder out. I should have got the old ladder out.
They're very nice ladders there.
When you have a baller on your shirt, all guns come out. Maybe a little bit. I like the mold on the side, on the left hand side over there.
That's how we do it.
Yeah, so it's just that. I like to record more. I just lately, and again, there's been a certain kind of malaise. I've been really feeling weird about the state of where we're at as a country, as a nation, and that doesn't always put me in the best place to record. But I also realized that, the way that my old mentor used to teach me is you got to get a couple of wins in you. And personally, I've had them. My business is doing well, and life here with the kids is fantastic. And I think that there aren't a lot of bright spots, societal wise. But maybe sometimes we don't give it enough credit. And so what I think I want to do is also highlight those and talk about the good things that I see out there. And you put a couple of wins together, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, I'm on a roll. And then energy begets energy, and then you're in a good place. So I think more than anything, I just got to get out of my funk and just get back to recording.
Yeah, a lot of podcasters get into a funk, or they get into they just get tired and they want to quit. And it's important to always remember like the positive, that those are the things that keep you going.
Well, you did this. I mean, you guys got this, for a variety of reasons, but hopefully one of them was because you enjoyed doing it. You really like doing it. It's like that old Jerry Maguire thing where they're talking to Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, and they're like, it wasn't always about the money, right? There was a point where it was about the love of the sport. And of course, Cuba Gooding Jr. wasn't what the heck Tommy Maguire's or what he's talking about, because he's forgotten that it was about getting out there and playing ball and just having a good time. And that's one of the things that I teach to my kids, or to the kids that I coach, volleyball, is, listen, I'm a 43-year-old guy who still just enjoys coming out here in the sun and playing ball. If the whole purpose of this was just winning, then I would have quit a long time ago, because I'm 5'7" in Mexican. I wasn't going to make it in the NBA.
Right.
You never know.
Right? You know, but maybe the Mexican Association of Basketball. But I still love playing. I still love coming out here and just, hanging out with you guys and just being in the sun and looking at all the stuff that, we get to enjoy being in Southern California. So
I like how you mentioned sun, 70-degree weather.
Well, it was pretty beautiful. But that's the whole thing, though, is I want them to learn that there's a love for the sport. And yes, if winning is fantastic, but what was it that drove you to it? One of the best quotes that I heard today was something to the effect of goals have a beginning and an end, but purpose is a lifestyle. And that really just got me to thinking about the fact that, we all have those goals and they're fantastic and you should have them. But why do you do what you do? And that's my drive in life, is why do I do what I do? And I think a lot of it is just to be the best Hugo that I can be. And that also means all these little things that I get involved with, like the podcasting or like creating a community on the Twitter machine or whatever. Or like what I told Bree, that by the time this conversation was done, that she was going to say that I am the best person that she has ever met on rant.
Probably absolutely top 2.
Done.
Yep.
Definitely.
Besides myself talking, yes. Oh, that's incredible, because that's what I teach my kids too. Like, it's not about winning; it's about having fun and learning something, and it's the experience. Like, enjoy the experience, because you might not be able to have that again. Like, when I go hiking and I go up to the mountain and I look over the cliff, I don't have any electronics or phones on me. I just look and I just take a mental picture and I just go back to it when I need a little pick me up. And those are the moments that just keep you going. And I enjoy talking to people and going up to people and just randomly talking to them. And so, like, I was talking to a friend today and I was like, I just miss talking to people. Like, I miss it so much. So I absolutely enjoy doing podcasting. And when you enjoy something, like, people can feel that, people can see that, and they appreciate that. And being able to be yourself is magic, because then obviously you're pretty awesome. So you're going to deliver awesome content. And that's what people come back to in the end.
I agree.
Wow, that went really fast.
It really did.
Listen, I hear that in the bedroom too, but that's not the hearing
Maybe it's a sex shows.
I thought this was a circle of trust. I thought we could
Oh,
do
no.
anything free.
It's true.
Yeah, you can be honest. We won't judge you. Okay. Wow, thank you.
Well, I mean, you got podcasting to do. You can't be wasting a bunch of time. You gotta.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you for being on our show. Show Live. How can people find you online? You said mostly Twitter?
For the most part. I mean, I try to be the same. I'm the same person everywhere. I think that my media is just, if you look at my Instagram, which is Hugo Torres, it's more about my cooking, because I'm also a fantastic cook.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Listen,
I'm gonna have to follow that.
That's why this wife of mine ain't leaving. She's got it all.
Someone that can cook, that's amazing.
I cook, I clean. Obviously, I'm Adonis. And but no, I mean, you can find me on there. But it's a lot of my cooking. But on Twitter, really, it's the place where most folks can find me. And what I like to pride myself is that if you come to Twitter and you want to engage, and you just want to have a good critical conversation, I'm all for it, right? Hit me up. I just don't do trolling. That's the only thing that I don't engage. But the Hugos post is where they can find.
Fantastic. And Ra, where can people find you on the internets?
right here in the garage. No. I'm just on Twitter at FDS Podcast 7. That's it. I don't have any other social stuff, and I can barely manage Twitter as it is. But
Yes, this is true.
tweet at me, send me a message, whatever. I'll be there.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Hugo, for coming and talking to us. You can find our show at letschatpodcast.net or on the, what did you say? The Twitter machine.
Twitter machine.
Let's Chat Live. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the new word.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. I really
Thanks,
I
Hugo.
had a great time. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, man.